it's 8:01, and we are at Sympathy for the Devil, which it turns out, unfortunately, we won't be having Black Mass tonight.
Okay.
Oh man.
I know. I asked, and I was told that I misread the description.
So I have to take back the goat head. That's what.
Usually.
Yeah, that's the after
Don't
party.
throw away that.
So I guess what we'll do is we'll just start it down at you guys' end, and everybody introduce your. Come on in.
We
You have to
triple our audience.
Triple the
Yeah.
audience.
Wow.
You
Neat.
have to tell us who you are since you came in after we started.
Okay, so we're introducing ourselves.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah,
Go
just
ahead.
tell us.
All right. I'm Jenny Ashford. I'm a horror writer, and I also write paranormal nonfiction, one of which I co-authored with Tom Ross here.
Yeah.
I have several horror fiction, short story collections, stuff like that. And I have 3 paranormal nonfiction books, and we also do a podcast called 13 O'clock
Weekly.
Weekly. It comes out every Tuesday. We do an audio one and a YouTube show. It's kind of just general weird stuff, you know.
Yeah, subscribe to the YouTube show.
Paranormal
Doesn't like
stuff,
it. Yeah.
UFOs, serial killers, all that kind of stuff.
We call bullshit on it if it isn't any good. If we think there's something to it, we'll tell you.
Yeah, and we make jokes
It's
about
called
it.
13 o'clock.
Yeah.
13 on YouTube.
Yep.
I'm LJ Heydorn. I'm a primarily epic fantasy writer. Also have a YouTube channel that called The Scribbler's Rest, where we feature Florida authors and artists and cosplayers, any sort of creative types, professional grade, hopefully. And we sit down and play board games and tabletop role-playing games like Dungeons & Dragons and things like that.
I'm Chris Helton. I am a designer and publisher of tabletop role-playing games. I also, since it seems to be obligatory, I do have a YouTube channel, but I haven't used mine in like a year, so I'm a slacker.
I'm a quiet person, so I'm trying to project my voice. My name is Sareth Ney. I'm a journalist for QDPI.com. It's AQDPI.com. It's my own publication. I am a former apprentice to Clive Barker. I am also a Wu-Tang Clan inspired superhero, Wu Manchu, as you can see. And I'm also the festival director of the Sareth Fest Music and Comedy Festival in Pueblo, Colorado.
Okay, so this panel is, I think, probably the easiest question that we can answer is, why do people like bad guys? And I think, you know, the obvious answer is their fashion sense. They get the cool clothes. Who wants to start? What do you you just toss it? You want ladies first? Okay.
Oh, I get to go first?
Yeah.
Why do we like bad guys?
Well, I'm sorry. I'm on this too. I'm sorry. Dang, I was talking. I'm sorry.
We'll make room.
Sorry.
You can't introduce yourself.
Sorry.
No, she can have that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead, introduce
I'm
yourself.
Cynthia
weren't
Lott.
doing anything.
I'm the author of The Feathers. It's a thriller horror paranormal novel, and that's the main.
So we're going to work our way, starting from them with
Okay.
what makes bad guys cool.
It's kind of a hard question because as long as I've been watching movies, I've always found the villains way more interesting than, because it seems like if you're a good guy, you can only be good in one way. You know what I mean? Villains can be evil in a whole range of different ways. And I think that's a much more interesting thing to explore. Plus it's, you know, most people are good people. So
Unlimited possibilities.
yeah, that's what I mean. And, you know, the good people are just kind of like, I don't know, there's just not much you can do with them, I guess. Because they're always going to do the right thing, what everybody thinks is the right thing. Whereas a villain doesn't have any restrictions in that area. They can do anything they want to do. And that makes them a lot more interesting, I think. You probably agree with that, right? I agree with that.
You know he's got more to say.
In my opinion, a good bad guy is the good guy. In other words, he's actually the hero. He just has different motivations, a different opinion.
Yeah?
Yeah. Now, that doesn't mean that all the villains are good guys. I'm just saying a good villain is actually an alternate hero.
Yeah.
That's the way I look at it.
That's kind of what we were talking about before about anti-heroes.
Yeah, it's like we were talking about. You know, Negan would be a good example.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks like a villain from your point of view. If you're fans of the normal cast, they went in there and murdered all of his buddies.
Yeah.
So he let him off easy, actually.
Yeah.
He's a warlord,
Yeah.
which maybe you might not agree with that, but there's no law and order in that world, and
And
he
that's
can't show
what
weakness in
happens.
front of his men.
Yeah.
So he took a couple of them out, punished them, showed them the deal, tortured some of them, showed them who had the power, brought them under submission, made them work for him.
Yeah.
How about the
You know,
Punisher?
in ancient Greece, that
Yeah.
would be considered to
Oh, he
be
loves the Punisher.
very, very noble virtues.
Well, I guess it would be. Like I said,
Right.
it's all in how you look at it.
It's all how you look at it.
Yeah.
Strength has
But he
virtues
killed
of its
Glenn.
own. What that?
I know.
He made
I was
him
sad
know
too.
what-
I was sad too.
What about Abraham?
Yeah, I know.
We love Abraham too, you know.
Yeah, he started going like the whole reflective thing, and the world was great, and that you knew with it. That was it. It was gone.
Poor Abraham.
You know, my thing is I think a lot of times the villain tends to be one of the most developed characters in a book.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you may have a cast of heroes and heroines in a book, and the author has to kind of divide their time and maybe focus on one or two. But when it comes to the bad guy, when it comes to the villain, he tends to be like, he may be the man in charge, but he gets the most of the focus. And there's a lot of development, I think,
You
of
have
that.
to detail.
So, and it probably the author secretly wishes that
But
was
just
him
look
or
at the
her.
Punisher. Look at the Punisher in the new Punisher series.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Best representation of the Punisher ever.
Sure.
Is he a bad guy?
No.
Not
No.
But yes.
He hung people
Yes,
off of meat
but
hooks.
no. Yes, but no.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah, they're
the
other
interesting
bad
thing
guys.
about
Yeah.
it.
Well,
That's why I asked about it.
even.
Yeah, but you
It's
know,
like,
from Negan's point of view, the guys who raided your camp and killed your people and slit their throats while they were asleep, they're the bad guys too. So
Oh,
actually,
yeah.
he showed them mercy.
Yeah. when you look
Had
at
that
it.
been
Good
maybe
point.
somebody
That's a
like
good
me, I'd have killed them all.
Yeah.
Maybe the
I
same
just
with you,
wanted to kill 'em all,
right?
sure.
If some guys raided your
Right.
camp and
Killed
killed
all
all
your
your
people,
friends,
man.
you'd have killed them all.
That's right.
So we have to see how this turns out.
Respect.
I think there's also the old writing saw of your heroes are only as good as the villain that they have to go up against. So if you have a crappy villain, you're going to have crappy hero.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think the villain too. I mean, nobody
Because
wants
the
to talk
hero
about
has to be
perfect
better than the
characters. You know, we're not perfect. We all have
they wanna
faults and flaws, and how boring it is to read about someone who's perfect. And I think we do relate more to the villains because they do have a dark side that is part of us. And I think too the whole idea of complexity, and a lot of these characters are really sometimes they're victims. You know, where they're seeking revenge. I mean, look at. Perfect example is Friday the 13th. I mean, the killer's a mom who's protecting her son, who was murdered as a child. You know, well, he wasn't murdered, but he was left alone to abandon and to drown in a lake. But you know, you kind of see a lot of it's revenge of these people. I think we were talking about last night too about the person who survives a monster attack becomes the monster. You know, and how do they recreate their world dealing with what they just went through? So, and that's like Negan too. I mean, you know, he's all these people die around him, and now he's kind of the monster. But we have a soft spot for those people.
Absolutely. I like how unpredictable the villains are, and like how, like as you mentioned earlier, like sometimes the villains can be the hero. And I'm not to sound biased, but I felt that way about Candyman. He wasn't really a villain; he was also a good guy.
Yes. He was
And
a good
Pinhead,
guy.
when he had to fight Dr. Channard in Part 2 of Hellbound Hellraiser 2, you know. And so sometimes you got to root for the bad guys. And I like rooting for the bad guys, even though I'm a superhero. I like going for the
But isn't the villain really just the person that loses?
It's hard to.
You know, I mean, that's the person who wins gets to tell their tale of
Yeah.
how this person.
Well, yeah, that raises an intriguing possibility. If the fiction that you're seeing, you're only seeing that from the good guy's point of view. It would be totally different if it was from the bad guy's point of view.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because I doubt that the villain is going around thinking, hey, I'm the villain.
No, the
Yeah, they don't. Yeah, they don't.
Well, they all think they're justified in what they do.
Yeah.
Or, you know, they think they're the hero, and these people just don't know what the hell they're doing. And
Good example would be Vader.
You get some
Yeah.
terrorist kid
Yeah.
from
Yeah.
this little colony and comes over and blows up your big
Yeah, you're protecting your
high
troops.
budget, you know,
Yeah, your Death Star.
taxpayer.
all those contractors.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's what they do about most.
And then you blame it on the guy with the exhaust
Right,
port.
sure.
And like most creature features, like most creature flicks, you want to really, you feel bad for the creature because what? Like we were
Especially
usually
like
in there and
Frankenstein.
we encroached on their habitat. That's usually the situation. And now you're like, oh man, I don't want them to kill that, swamp creature or whatever because we just took over their land. But I think too, like aliens even. I mean, she was just wanting to protect her babies. I mean, that's just like one example. But she's like, she's all got little babies, and they're only using humans to procreate their like people, their little aliens. So you're right. I mean, from an alien's point of view, they're like, you know, we just want to propagate our species. So
Yeah, you're just food. Why are you
right.
fighting?
Yeah. Move.
Like, I'm a first-generation Cambodian American, and my parents came here from Cambodia during the whole Khmer Rouge, Pol Pot era. And I remember watching like the killing fields and seeing like the journalists and like how all that went through, and like John Lennon playing Imagine over and over again. And when I was apprenticing for Clive, I wrote a story called Rouge Rum, like red rum, and through the eyes of a Khmer Rouge soldier, and see why he went through that path, and he ends up killing his own flesh and blood and like his own parents and for revenge. And it's just like Mark Miller, who was like the vice president of his company, was like, you know, when you painted those pictures and you saw that in your mind, and I took my parents' war stories and put them in there to pay homage to him, and like because of all the stories that they told him about, he goes that story, even though it was short, like haunted me for weeks, and that was like the biggest compliment, because I was like, I didn't think I could like touch your soul like that, you know. It's like to make you think about the Khmer Rouge and like how people lost arms and just died because they were educated or wore glasses or whatever.
I guess kind of flipping the question, what makes a villain a bad villain?
Like a bad villain in the sense that you don't think they're not an effective villain?
Well, I mean, obviously, you know, not just incompetence, because then, I mean, that's just, you know, luck of the draw. But I mean, what do you think it would take to make to craft a shoddy villain?
Oh, that's kind of hard. Probably
Lack of charisma would be one.
lack of charisma,
Yeah.
not a clear-cut motivation, because I think villains have to have a motivation, even if it's a fucked-up motivation. I think they really have to have a reason that they're, and I think the best villains, like you mentioned before, almost kind of have to feel like they're the good guy or they're doing the right thing. So I think if you're going to make a bad villain, it would be somebody that just had a stupid motivation or didn't have any motivation, or or something like that.
Well, even the Joker had a motivation. He just wanted to see people suffer, wanted to see the world burn.
Yeah, which I guess,
Which that's a motivation.
I mean,
Even
that's a
the
pretty
Texas
clear cut.
Chainsaw Massacre wanted
Yeah.
to feed his family.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As they would say in real estate, location. I mean, you would hate to have an aquatic villain on dry land somewhere, out of place. I mean, that would make a very horrible villain. To think, why in the world is he even there without a really good solid purpose? It just doesn't make a lot of sense. So I think your villain really has to have a good reason to be where the location he's at or she's at, and what they're doing there. Whatever the goal may be, even if they're out of their normal element, at least give them a good reason, good purpose of why they're out of the normal element. You just don't want to toss them haphazardly.
Yeah, so a bad villain has no purpose, no drive.
So Ed Gein,
I think, I love Halloween. I love John Carpenter. I think that Rob Zombie's remake of Halloween kind of went more into Michael Myers, but I think his original film, although I love it, Michael Myers didn't really have a motive, did he really? I mean, he was just a child. He wasn't abused. He wasn't neglected. He was from a middle-class, well-to-do family. He just wanted to murder his sister. So I think that, I love the film. The original one, he was just a clear-out cut murderer. I mean, he really didn't have much of a motive.
Villain as much as
Just a murderer.
Just a
Yeah.
It took a brother-sister
and that's it.
hatred a little bit,
I
took
mean,
a little extra, a
I
little
kind of felt
further.
like he was less a person than almost like a
Right.
force of nature.
Right.
Like
and I think
fate
that
or
he
something.
said, this isn't a person, it's just pure evil.
Yeah, so I don't even
So maybe
think.
that's what he was trying to get at. Like,
Yeah.
he wasn't even a person you can relate to. This is
Yeah.
just pure evil.
Yeah, which is why his face was blank and stuff
Right.
like that. Yeah. I think
Right.
he was just-
and
Yes.
Jason.
I'd
Yeah,
probably say
so-
like being bullied or having like a traumatic background, or their shortcomings took them far. And I think that's why I practice I do stand-up comedy as well, and so that's why I take all my pains and my shortcomings and just throw them on the wall and tell them to random strangers, because it's therapeutic and it's cheap therapy. And so I think that's why I think that's what how villains become, is they have misplaced rage or had a crazy background being bullied or whatever. But yeah, they didn't know how to channel it, and so they unleash it onto the world. I want revenge, but I don't know. I'm just gonna throw it at random people, like that movie Valentine, or when they were on a prom date, or It's one of those like high school movies like Carrie or something
Yeah.
like that. You know, we can. That's the easiest
Yeah,
one, I think.
well, Carrie.
Yeah.
Anyone out there, any of you have any questions?
What is your take on Heydorn then? Because he was just like,
Well, we're talking about in fiction, not necessarily in
Well,
reality.
I don't know, I guess.
well, there's been a lot of movies about
represented
Heydorn.
That's true,
Chainsaw
yeah, that's
Massacre.
He missed his mom. He dug her up out of the
I know,
cemetery.
right? It was horrible.
Yeah, he just
He
couldn't
wasn't-
handle
he-
it.
Evil, really.
Mommy issues.
I know.
Actually, what about the villain turned hero storyline? What do you guys take on that? You know, the
I
kind
love
of,
it.
you know, you almost would say kind of Anakin, you know, kind of, but that's kind of, he didn't really
You know what I
go
think the
through
best? You know what I think
journey
the best one?
of being a good guy. I want to know, so what is your take on a villain who actually has to work to be a good person, has to redeem
that way.
themselves?
Yeah, it's a redemption story.
Yeah, a redemption storyline.
Well, that's all throughout Star Wars. When you think about it, that's all throughout. You know, it's very Eastern philosophy. A lot of basically the end sum total of Star Wars, all those movies, is Buddhism.
Yeah.
And the Four Noble Truths. You know, which is, I don't know if you guys know anything about that, but just to paraphrase it, there are only 4 things in life that are true. 1, life is more about suffering than it is about pleasure. 2, we suffer because we desire things that in the end do not fulfill us or disappoint us. 3, if we stop desiring these things in the end, we'll stop suffering over them. 4, the only way to stop desire is to reach nirvana. Nirvana is enlightened indifference, where you don't really give a shit. If I give you a vase and you love it, you love this vase.
I've
Okay?
reached, I've fulfilled it.
Well, let me finish. I give you a wonderful vase, you love it, you get attached to it. Like, God, this vase is beautiful, but you drop it and break it, boom. Now you suffer. Oh, that's terrible. That's terrible. But when you reach nirvana, you get the vase, you go, oh, that's cool, and you break it, oh, that's all right. That wasn't mine to begin with. Everything is transitory. It comes and it goes. Even I'm temporary. I'm born, I live, I die. It's all right. It's all good. So, basically, that's what Star Wars is about. The Sith said, yes, that's right. But that 4th one, that's wrong. Because if life is about indifference, then that means your life doesn't matter. Okay? It means that you're just going to come and go. And the things that you believe in just come and go. So if that's the case, then you have nothing to lose. So why not fight for what you want and go down in a blaze of glory? Because it doesn't matter. So that's a reverse side. That's why the Force had the Force and then the dark side. They're both equally true.
You need both things.
You
You
know,
need both. They're different sides of the same coin.
You know, I tend to think when you look at a character who's evil and trying to go towards good, it can be an interesting way to develop a character because you're going to be. It's like an addict. You're tempted. There's going to be temptations along the way, and it's so easy to slip back into your old routine. So if that's portrayed right, then that will come across to the reader or to the viewer or whatever. Like this guy's struggling. Maybe he even makes mistakes along the way, and it's just like and he stops. He or she stops himself from doing it. So it could really make a good character.
Talking about Dexter there.
I was just going to say that exact thing. Yeah.
So
I think in the recent spate of X-Men movies, the character of Magneto had that sort of arc where he was really trying to except he knew that all it really took was one bad day, and he was which is what happened. They kill his wife, bam. He goes back in, and he wants to burn the world down. So I think he's kind of he's one of those characters who's always he knows he's a villain. I think he's one of the few villains that knows he's the villain of his story.
No, I don't think
But
so.
he wants to be the hero of it.
Yeah, I think he's willing to
And
sacrifice to be there, yeah.
but he doesn't really know how to get to that point, and so when he reacts to things, he tends to react wrongly.
I disagree. I don't think he sees himself as a villain. I think he sees himself as a hero to the mutants. He wants to go to a more aggressive role rather than Xavier's more, negotiating. Xavier wants to. I think somebody pointed it out. I mean, Magneto's the Malcolm X, whereas Charles is the Martin Luther King of the mutants. So so I don't think he sees himself as a villain. He sees himself as a defender of mutant kind.
And that's interesting too, like what you convince yourself that you are. And I think too, I think of like Jigsaw and Saw, and here's somebody who's dying of cancer. You know, he doesn't kill anybody. He lets them kill themselves. And he's pretty much in his mind cleansing the world of criminals or people who are making wrong decisions. And I think of Interview with the Vampire. You know, Lewis, he knows he's a vampire. He's never going to get out of this, but he turns his back on Lestat, you know, when he decides to try to live a life of being a good vampire, you know, and pretty much turns his back on the whole vampire world. And so I think there's a lot of those things, like you kind of justify, I'm not good, there's something wrong with me, but I'm going to try to justify this somehow. And I guess I'm taught myself into being a good person.
Another good play on the vampire theme, I think, is one of my favorite villains of all time. Is Hannibal Lecter.
Oh yeah.
Especially in Hannibal Rising, where it shows his genesis.
Oh yeah.
And boy, he looks an awful lot like the Punisher in the first movie, because a lot of the stuff that he does is kind of justified, but he's weird. And he goes on to, and then he goes on to, you know, he's eating victims. Because think about that. What does that mean? And then, have any of you guys seen Hannibal Rising?
I've seen them all.
Where
I've read them
he
all.
liked primitive warriors like samurai and things like that, and that was the imagery that he used. The ultimate thing to do to an enemy after you kill him is to use his body as nourishment and then end up flushing it down the toilet when you're through with it. You've now reduced the enemy to nourishment and food and then waste. Now it's really the primal force behind this guy.
My two favorites are, not to be biased again, but Nightbreed, the director's cut. And my other favorite is Jacobach Watch from Mr. Be Gone, from Clive as well. And if it wasn't for, like, he's like a little demon of a guy, and he's like possesses the book while you're reading it. And so that book really messed with my head. And if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have reached out to Clive and say, hey, I need to graduate college, I need an internship, take me as your student. And then, for some odd reason, complete shot in the dark, he reached back out to me and took me in as a student. And but those are my two favorite guys that are villains that want to be heroes. And how the monsters in Nightbreed are the good guys and the humans are the bad guys. I loved how he flipped it. Even in the book Cabal, that was brilliant.
The Silence of the Lambs books were so awesome. I mean, I like flew through those like in days. I read like one in a day. Or
The best out of the series was the movie Hannibal Rising. I just like how it looked,
Oh,
the
it's
filmography,
great.
you know, the sets and everything. Even the Russian tank that was used is spot on. That's the correct tank, and the equipment that was strapped to it, including the bicycle, was spot on for Russian soldiers on the Eastern Front during that time. Because you can't walk around after you get out of your tank. You can't drive it anywhere, so you ride around on a bicycle to go get some beer and come back.
Yeah.
That's what they were doing.
Never thought about
That's what they did.
What creators do you guys think does good villains, and what about their approach do you think makes them good at it?
Yeah. Gosh,
There's a lot of good
what?
ones.
Yeah,
So
what
many.
villains?
I don't
I'll
even
start
know
down
where to
here
start.
while you guys think.
Yeah, because I'm like, I gotta.
I guess not trying to be biased again, but my favorite creator is Clive, because like his guys, like Pinhead, you have to
Oh,
stop
yeah.
walking.
Pinhead's fucking awesome.
You know, they come and get you. Or you say Candyman 5 times, Candyman's gonna come and get you. And if you ride the Midnight Meat Train, Mahogany's gonna
That
get
was
you.
awesome.
You know, it's like they're not provoked, and you know, I'm not the fastest guy in the world, but I can probably outrun Michael Myers and jump in my car and
Yeah,
drive away.
right. Seriously.
You know, and
Fucking seriously.
Keyless Unlock, but like I can't escape Freddy Krueger, and you can't escape that either. But like Clive was always consistent, like back in the early like late '80s, early '90s, and that's what drew me the most to him. And he was like probably the youngest out of the Masters of Horror, and I never reached out to Wes Craven, the late great Wes Craven or John Carpenter, but they were all nice guys, and I found out like the most successful writers when I lived out in LA was like the most friendliest writers, whether it was Clive or John Carpenter or Mark Miller.
Yeah.
They were all friendly, and they were always willing to give you advice. And I haven't read anything from Mark, but it's like the new, his comic books I got to read, and the new Hellraiser comic books. But yeah, the friendliest Masters of Horror are the friendliest ones, so the most successful ones, anyways, that I know of.
Yeah, it's funny because I go to a lot of horror conventions, and most of the horror writers I meet are the nicest people, and you know they're nicer than like some literary people. You know, they're just mystery and horror people are just.
They just have a great
Just don't check their web browser.
Right. I don't know. I think that so many movies are well done. I was just thinking too of like even like John Carpenter of The Thing, and you know The Thing, it just wanted to be left alone. I mean, they got on its, you know, they unearthed it, you know, and it was just protecting itself. And I think of you know, the movie Super 8, which isn't really a horror film, but you know, this creature just wanted to get back home, you know, and yes, it killed people, ate people, but just wanted to get back home. And I think there's just a lot of things like that, you know, we sympathize with revenge, we sympathize with wanting to do right, and like Lestat and Lewis wanting to look at the dark side of ourselves and try to come to peace with it. So there's just so many that are well done. I don't know, that's kind of a hard question.
Well, it's
So-
an easy question.
Stephen King.
Stephen, I think for me, one of my all-time favorite horror books is came out from the short-lived Abyss imprint in the mid to late '80s, and it was Kathy Koja's, I hope that's how I'm supposed to pronounce her name, novel Skin. And it's like there's no supernatural, there's no you know, anything weird, other than the fact it's set in the art community. And but it has this villain who is just, she manages to take a real person and turn her into like she's just alien. I mean, you know, saying that the woman's crazy is probably just, you know, I think too easy of a thing. But it's, you know, and it's one of these things where reading the book you can see that something really bad is coming from this person, but nobody around her can really, you know, they think, oh, that's just, you know, like a quirk, or, and then by the time, you know, the train is leaving the station, it's too late, and yeah.
You know, I guess for me, it's more of a type of character. I like villains that don't have any superpowers or special killing implements of any sort. So, using more of like their mind to convince you of things. Mind, right? Mind, just kind of mind fucking you. Yeah. You know, like Hannibal or something like that. They're trying to convince you of what they're doing and sway you one way or another to their a little bit of their thinking. And if they can just do that, they can just move you over there. I mean, that's tremendous power that they have over you, and especially even in reading something like that. Just going like, wait a minute, okay, I can start to see a little bit of where he's coming from. I can understand this, and I can see where he's wronged or she's wronged on these things, and you feel sympathy for that
Oh,
individual.
yeah.
But to me, that seems like one of the most powerful villains you can have is someone that doesn't need anything other than to speak to you, and
Their personality.
yeah, just that and the charisma just coming off of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, I guess you'd say the villains themselves, a good one. I would say the best type would be some kind of a primal archetype. I guess the best example, if I could come up with just off the top of my head, probably the best villain of all times was Darth Vader.
Yeah.
Okay, because he was just a very primal, kind of an ancient type of father archetype, and he was all just about power and order, and that's a villain at its essence, really. It's almost kind of like a father figure.
It's
That's
definitely
the
that power
essence of it.
trip.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting, one thing that villains often have in common is that they tend to be a force for order more
Yeah.
than whereas, you know, the hero is the agent of chaos. It's disrupting things.
Freedom.
Yeah.
Freedom's not the villain. The villain's more about order. Maybe it's only his order.
Right.
But in Vader's case, it was like a universal order, what do you call it? An institutional order, government. That's what it was about. And he kind of had a mythic quality to him. You know, a lot of people compare him to Odin. So, you know, it's like something from mythology.
Yeah.
Well, one of the
Not
things,
so much out of real life, but you could relate to it.
Right.
You know.
well, one of the things when you look at those films and stuff like that, most of what was happening was there was bickering between all these different worlds and everything else of trying to get anything done, kind of like the Senate and Congress in general here.
Yeah.
And he says, you know what? In order to get something done,
We're just going to tell
we're going to tell you what to do, and that's it, and we'll get stuff done.
Yeah. Well, actually, in the new one, which I actually liked a lot. Some people didn't like it. I liked it. The new version of the Empire is called the First Order. What is the First Order? Is the First Order nature? Is it? And I'm talking about animal nature of prey and predator, a hierarchy of the strong at the top, the ones who work for the strong, and then the weak. Because he said that the rest, during his speech, the general said, we're fighting against a world that has acquiesced to chaos and disorder. And they were bringing order. And I guess it's the natural order, the animal order is what they're talking about, I think.
Yeah, like a top-down.
A top-down, society, dictatorship. Which that's the natural state of nature of animals. Is dictatorship, prey and predator. That's what they're talking about.
We'll comply.
Yeah. You will comply, I eat you. That's how it is. You run or I eat you. What about you?
Well, I kind of like, since you guys have mentioned I kind of wanted to do unusual villains or a villain that you wouldn't expect to be a villain. And the first one, when you were talking about that book, I don't know if you guys have read Thomas Tryon's Harvest Home. It was kind of like, it came out in the 70s, but kind of like a Children of the Corn, Wicker Man kind of vibe about a city family that goes and lives in this idyllic agricultural community that obviously turns out to be not what it seems like. But the woman in that, the widow, I loved her character because she was an old lady and she was so sweet. You had no idea the whole time, spoiler alert, she turns out to be like the worst, and she's doing all these machinations behind the scenes and stuff like that. But you never suspect, and it's so insidious because you would never suspect this sweet old lady. She's bringing you pies over, she's helping you out, and there was nothing in the book to suggest that she had any ulterior motives whatsoever. And so she was very, very scary to me because I totally, even though I knew shit was going to go wrong, I didn't expect that she was going to be kind of the engineer of it. Yeah.
What's the name of the book again?
Harvest Home. Came out in the early 70s.
Kind of like that little bit of feel you got with Walking Dead with Carol and the cookies and the flowers.
Yeah. Although Ezekiel saw right through that.
Right.
When she came in there, he's like, knock that shit up. I know what you're doing.
The character in the book I mentioned was a modern dancer. So, how scary is, and she's probably 5'2", something like that. But so you think, how scary can this tiny dancer woman be? Right. And you find out. This probably won't be applicable to everyone, since not everyone are fiction writers. But in your own work, when it comes to crafting the villain, is there anything special in your process, or is there a certain type of villain that you kind of gravitate to in your stories?
For me, I like to turn on music and put me in the mood. For example, when I wrote Rouge Rum, I would play a Perfect Circle's cover of Imagine, put me back into that Killing Fields thing that what John Lennon did, and I would play the unplugged Alice in Chains, because Nutshell, just when they open it up, just and just got into my brain, and I'm when I wrote those, and so those help me out, throw on music and takes you to the, and when I write about a killing that's taking place, or a sex scene, my heart starts racing, but I can't stop writing, and it's just oh my goodness, what the heck, and my pen just takes over, and I'm I gotta complete this, and I don't care how graphic it is, but I'm just gonna complete this killing. And I'm a really nice guy, but
it's okay.
But
we understand.
You're a completionist when it comes to killing.
Yeah, Iron Man.
Body counts don't matter.
And Iron Man said, you create your own demons, and so I've had plenty of demons, and for me to like slay them on paper with a pen, with my liquid swords, like the Jizza, I would totally like slay them, and it would like help me out. It's therapeutic. Like, you know, like Clive. When I went to Clive, I had a lot of misplaced rage, and he goes, "I'm going to teach you how to channel it properly and not have you blow up like someone that has been bullied. So I'm going to teach you how to channel it on pen and paper." And I'm glad that he did, or else I wouldn't turn out to be like a superhero.
I think music is very helpful. For me, I listen to a lot of soundtracks, so horror movie soundtracks. When I wrote this one, I listened to Suspiria soundtrack, which is pretty creepy. It's by Goblin, the band Goblin, yeah. And there's actually an actress out there from Suspiria. But I also, the second book to this one, I listened to It Follows soundtrack and a lot of just really creepy ambient music. For my villain, he came to me in a dream wearing this Venetian bird mask, and in my dream, I felt very peaceful with him, even though I know he was about to murder someone. I saw him go up the staircase. My first victim was a 15-year-old girl. In my dream, he was about to kill her, and when he went up to the staircase, I knew what he was about to do, but I was at peace with it, but somehow I still trusted him. I wanted to have empathy with him, and it was a very strange feeling. But when I woke up, I wrote down everything about him and created him. And even though he's a murderer, he has an agenda. There's a reason why he's doing this. He has motive. I have great empathy with him. And anyway, that's my villain. I can relate to him as I can with all my characters, but I have a very soft spot for Thomas Carpenter, and that's my murderer. So I really like him. So that's him.
Great.
I think I've written several different villains. When I write my villains, what I enjoy about it is when I first portray my villain, you don't think he's the villain. You know, you just see somebody doing what their job is, and you may find later on that they were simply just a soldier who was doing some, you know, what they were told to do. You think they were quieting perhaps a rebellion of some sort, and in essence, really, the people that normally you would view as good were the people who were rebelling. But this guy was going, wait a minute, hold on a second, you know, these people are uprising, and we have to stop this, so that when I do my villains, I want you to see them through their eyes, and I also want you to feel bad for them on what may happen to them, you know, whether they pass away or get named or whatever befalls them.
It's funny that you say that.
Yeah.
History's filled with great men. None of those guys were any good. None of them. Julius Caesar, very brave. That guy was a fantastic military commander. He was brilliant, and ended up going back and putting the first bricks into the Roman Empire, which kept the Roman Republic in some way running on for hundreds of years. But that guy slaughtered women and children and killed entire villages, but hailed as a hero. So, reality is not necessarily black and white.
No.
Shades of gray.
Yeah, no, really.
And none of those great guys are really good.
No.
Yeah.
But it's also based upon whose eyes you're viewing it from.
Yeah, I don't really care. I just make sure the job gets done, I'm happy.
Well,
As long as I benefit.
If you're in Rome, it's like, yeah, we put down those barbarian Germanic hordes out there.
And try to defend
Uncivilized.
They would have come and
Again,
ruined civilization.
The rule of order against.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the rule of order and chaos. Exactly what we talk about. These are mythic archetypes. I mean, this has been going on for these tales go back thousands of years. It's basically the same thing you're going to find in Old Testament stories about the Exodus, uprisings against kings trying to, these people trying to find freedom. But sometimes it can be seen from a different point of view too. So and none of that stuff is historical. All mythological. Yeah. No patriarchs.
Yeah,
All reboots of Sargon.
as far as writing villains, it's like I don't really approach when I write something. I don't really approach it with the idea of like, oh, this is the villain and this is the good guy, because I tend to think of a concept or a theme, and then kind of develop it. So I think my villain like grows out of the concept of the story, like whatever it needs. And I also have this weird perverse thing where,
Is it perverse?
well, perverse in a sense that, I feel like that. That you know how a lot of horror movies and horror novels have the same kind of structure, whereas, you know, there's, you know, there's a monster or a villain or whatever, and then like the good days they struggle and they fight him, but then they win. And I don't really like to do that. I either like to end it ambiguous, like the villain could still be there, or I like the good guys to lose.
Yeah.
And I'm not really sure why I did. Like the one novel I wrote called The Five Poisons. It's like when I wrote it, I kind of wanted the idea. It's like I want that idea of like a character that you really like, and she tries really hard, and still she fails. You know what I mean? Because you don't read a lot of stuff. I know it's depressing, but you don't read a lot of stuff
At the same time, how many, you know, what percentage of the books that are out there does, you know, ultimately the person viewed as the villain loses, and the hero or heroine survives somehow, even if there's only one person left from that team, or you know, majority of the books. And so sometimes you're like, okay, I'm tired. I need to see something different. Let me, you know, let me read or watch or something where. Just for once, you know, let's keep our fingers crossed for that bad guy. Maybe the alien will finally wipe them all out.
Yeah,
you know?
Hannibal Lecter will feed his victim his own brain.
Yeah. And that's why Empire Strikes Back was the best Star Wars movie, because the good guys lost in that one.
But then there was another one.
Boy, there was another one.
Yeah.
But the story never ends.
Standalone.
Yeah.
Any questions or anything from the peanut gallery? Scary
Actually,
clowns,
that's
you
kind
have
of
no
perfect
questions?
segue into something I was wondering was what each of you guys. Okay, with like Negan, I really find myself laughing at a lot of his jokes, and I shouldn't be.
Why not?
So which villain do you find yourself really like? I could almost be on their team.
Well, yeah, that's the idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah, to be
Hannibal Lecter.
I kind of dig Hannibal Lecter.
To be a warlord or a dictator,
Right.
you must have charisma. And to be charisma, you can't be a piece of shit. These, like I said, all these great men, none of them are really good, but they have that same quality. He's protecting his own. He's doing what a general would do if you're a warlord. You can't show weakness in front of your men. They'll kill you if they're worth a shit.
Right.
Because in an outfit like that, only the strong can be the leader. Moment of weakness, then you're not fit for duty. You got to go. That's what they're showing.
I think when, you know, when you look at, like, say, Negan, for instance, you almost want to say, do you know what? If someone's going to kill me, you know, please entertain me before I go, because, you know, yes, please, one more hit on the head, you know.
And that scene, people talk about, boy, he's really showing off his power to impress all these people down on their knees. That's only part of it. He's showing all his buddies back there and his army what his power is. And that's building confidence in the men.
But he's
Unit
also
cohesion.
like one of those people that you watch and you just can't wait for him to die.
I want to
You love his character.
I kind of don't want to die.
I want him to join the team.
You feel glad. You have to pay
but on
for
the
it.
same boat, you want him to die.
Because he's such a
He's
good
worth more
character.
alive than he is
Yes.
dead. What if he was on the team? What if he was working for Rick?
So,
You guys read the
I
comic?
mean,
No,
I have not.
no,
Like
I've
I
heard.
know a lot
Yeah.
of the plot
it's like you
points.
can't stop
Yes.
watching, but still, on the other hand, you want him to just go away.
Well,
he's
look,
so
I mean,
horrible.
they're telegraphing
But
it
he's-
to you.
I
Why do
think
they have a
he's-
cell? Why are they building a
Why did
cell?
Morgan build
Why
it?
is Morgan saying that people can change?
Absolutely. Yeah, that was a good
But I think you know,
Yeah.
Negan's like the villain you love to hate.
Yes,
I mean,
exactly.
he's such a powerful
Yeah.
character, and you're like, this is awesome.
Go
you know?
away, but stay.
He's one of those characters that, you know, you wouldn't want to be in a room with him.
No.
Yeah.
But it's like,
Yeah,
Sure,
but
no, want him on your side, though.
Yeah.
Think about it.
yeah, you'd rather,
your buddy.
yeah, you don't want him
Yeah.
against you.
Yeah.
You know.
You don't want
But
him.
if you're on his
Let's
side,
go down to the
he's
bar.
also evil. He's also evil if you're on his side. He'll kill you in a heartbeat if you don't really want
He's just keeping order amongst a bunch of badasses. He's got to understand that the guys that he's recruited, they're all tough.
But the
You
thing
can't
with
be
Negan
easy
too,
on them.
and I think
But he'll
that's
take
funny.
him out.
The thing with Negan too, that I think is funny is that when he showed up, and I like Negan. I mean, he's all right, but you know, when he
Like
showed
him.
up, you know, everybody threatened to not watch it anymore because it was so violent. And I was thinking, this is a show about people eating people.
Yeah.
Like
Right?
from day one, the show
Thank
has been
you.
ultra violent. Like
Like, did you
Kids
guys not
get their
see the
heads-
episode where
yeah,
Noah
like
got his
in this
face
show.
torn off?
Like, like kids
Synopsis
turn into
is-
zombies, babies get eaten, whatever.
Yeah.
But, so the one guy that shows up, I mean, how powerful is that? Everybody's like, I can't watch this.
Yeah, 'cause
Like-
I don't watch.
I've been watching blood splatter forever, but
Yeah.
But that's, just,
I don't wanna
that's,
do
that's,
it.
that's the kind of impact this guy has, right? He shows up and everybody's like, oh my god, that's just too much, I can't.
Yeah.
I know it's insane.
But
Far
most
worse
of
than the
people I know
governor.
watch
That's
Walking
right.
Dead,
Yeah,
and
it's
I saw
awesome.
a lot of that same reaction. It's like, oh, this is just too nihilistic. I'm like, you're watching
Really?
a zombie
You're watching
television.
like everybody-
Yeah.
Yeah.
Every scene in the
How-
movie and
Did we
show
forget
is
about
disgusting.
Terminus?
Rick,
Yeah.
Rick is gonna have to
You
kill
know.
him. Rick is
Did
gonna
you
have to
forget
kill
about
him.
the
That's-
road?
that's
Those
it.
guys walking down the road
Listen,
trying to
who
rape the
will kill
boy.
him?
Rick.
Yeah,
And
that's
then,
right.
what was his
I
name?
think that
And then Rick tore his
And then
throat
Rick
out.
tore his
I think the
throat out.
shark
His
and
teeth.
gutted him.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty violent.
Yeah.
Remember what kind of movie you're watching.
But I really heard this one quote from this author who wrote
Touchy-feely.
nonfiction
Yeah, this is real
books about,
touchy-feely shit.
about World War II. And his quote was about World War II. I thought was really interesting. And he said, you know, I saw a lot of aspects of World War II, and any situation like World War II is a room with 1,000 corners. And I think that that is so well how we see different aspects of our personality, a situation. It's not black and white. There's so many complexities. It's a room with 1,000 corners. And I think, you know, we do root for the villain a lot because we are the villain. You know, we're not perfect. There's things about us that we want to be the villain, and we want to sometimes be on Negan's side. You know, I mean, he's very charismatic. But not just that. You know, we want to root for people who, you know, that aren't like us, but something that we can relate to.
And they dress cool.
I think the three. I see myself in like three groups, and they're all like created by Clive. Not to be biased again, but I see myself like being part of the Cenobites because Clive taught me how to raise hell properly, and Hunter S. Thompson did too on the nonfiction side. And the second group that I see myself seeing is a monster in Midian from Cabal and the Nightbreed, because each one of those guys has like their own weaknesses, and whether it's the sun or whatever. And the third is I could totally be like best friends with Harvey from The Thief of Always. I told Clive like after I read the book and how I could relate to Harvey so much that during my first like my summer internship in 2009, he was like, from now on I'm gonna call you Harvey, and this is the holiday house. And I'm like, anything you want happen, we'll make it happen.
I think you're right. Like Cenobites, they're really calm, aren't they, for the most part?
They are very calm,
Overly.
because they
They're
know
like,
you
okay,
hate
we're just gonna rip you
Abby.
apart. You know,
They
like
will
no-
rip
no
you
offense.
apart, period.
It's just, you know, it's like
It's
you
gonna
know,
hurt like hell.
Yeah,
it's gonna hurt like hell.
they're kind of like, you know, those big
This is
trucks
just my job.
that tear up the first stage of road work. They go in and tear up the road and just break everything up into little bitty pieces. That's kind of like, you know, what they are. They're, you know, their job is just run things
That's
over
their
and break
job.
them up into little bitty pieces.
You know what else was who else was a really good villain? I never really heard anybody talk about it, but he kind of filled a lot of the mythic archetypes of villain in similar to the way Darth Vader did. It was Xerxes from the movie 300. Remember him?
Yeah.
A lot of people forget about him. He was a fucking awesome hero. First of all, he was huge. He was physically imposing. He was quiet and calm. He was come to bringing you civilization and order and riches and security and all this hedonistic pleasure. He was going to bring all that to you, but you had to kneel before him. You know, I thought that was an awesome concept.
He didn't ask for
To
half
see-
everything.
Yeah, he didn't ask for half. He just wanted you to,
Right.
you know, to bask in his glory, and that's kind of a sinister, But and I thought Leonidas, the way that he was handled in that was a very good, heroic, mythic archetype. The way Leonidas was portrayed in the 300, did the little quips and everything, things that he did, a lot of physical bravery, very Greek, Greco-Roman flavored story. I liked it, real good, and not a lot of sophisticated dialogue, not a lot of, not even a sophisticated plot, just effective.
It was a great movie.
Yeah, I loved it. It kind of spoke to your heart, it was primal.
Oh, yeah, it was awesome.
And you're like, yeah, get him. And the slow motion combat scenes.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
Make a man's testosterone rise.
Testosterone is not necessary.
well, Greeks like that.
Yeah.
Then go home. Then go home. Get a little spray paint.
Yeah,
Huh?
All like his abs.
I got abs now.
Since we're getting to the end of things, why don't we make this kind of a wild card round? Anything that didn't get brought up or and get to talk quite a bit as much about regarding villains. That you-
Man.
Come on, don't let me
Should I,
upstage
do I
you.
just do this again, or?
You're a villain.
No.
I'm all right. Yeah, you're all right.
The villains.
Well, just,
Anything
it's
you
like a
wanna
wild
talk about.
card.
Anything.
Yeah, just whatever you want to.
I wish horror was like the good old days, like saying like the early. I mean, I love like the classic like Frankenstein monster and Dracula and stuff like that. But like I went. The reason why I reached out to Clive, like my initial email was like, can you teach me how to not make PG-13 horror movies? Can you teach me not how to make remakes? Can you teach me how not to make torture porn? Because I've seen enough of that. I mean, not Saw or Hostile, but like after a while you become numb to it. And teach me how to scare people properly. Like get me into their brains, like you did to me. Because Candyman scared me for like 6 years. Like I couldn't use the bathroom, like with the lights on, or the doors had to be open, and slept with the light on. It's like teach me how to scare people properly. And so I wish horror was back to the good old days. And so hopefully, if I'm going back to my horror roots, they're 2 pages long, but I want to get right to the point, no slow burning, and but yeah, hopefully become a future master of horror. That was like my initial goal, to scare people.
I think, just to give horror authors a chance, I think that there's so many different ways we see horror, and I think that you're right, like you come across really good horror stories, and we all love Anne Rice and House on Haunted Hill and all these great classic horror books, Rebecca. And I think too, you come across films sometimes, I don't know if people feel like this about this movie, but I loved It Follows. I don't know if you saw that, but it was a great horror film that came out a couple of years ago, very indie, very creepy. It Follows.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Very creepy, very interesting idea, something that just never leaves. and I just love how permanent it is, and it just never goes away, and how you deal with something like that. And how it's so human, how it's passed on from person to person. So I think you come across things like that and you're like, wow, like that's a fresh take on horror, So you come across a book that does that, or a movie that does that, and it does reignite your passion for horror again. And I just hope it's a genre that always people can relate to and enjoy and see part of themselves in, and just give horror authors a chance.
Oh yeah, and I love like the recent stuff like Martyrs, like the original one, like the foreign one, and like High Tension, stuff like those, and It Follows was a great one as well. So I think they're coming back with like a great horror, like with substance,
And something more innovative, like they're not just rehashing the same idea over and over. I thought, It Follows was pretty unique, in the concept, but we'll see.
I guess when I look at, say, horror, there's always been movies that have had lots of visual gore and things like that, and you see like everything that's happening. But then when you look at some of the things like, say, Psycho, and when you don't see everything that's happening, when you have to hear it, and when you have to just there's some blood going down the drain, but you didn't see what happened. Or even when you're the monster, you don't, or the killer, you don't see them completely. You may catch glimpses of them, and leaving you in suspense and leaving your mind just working on what's going on. What does this person look like? What just happened? I mean, I think your mind can just make a much more horrible scene than anybody's going to come out with CGI.
Yeah, like old 70s horror.
Well, yeah.
Well,
Kinda
yeah,
creepy.
and I was just gonna say, like, kind of going off that, I find that I see a lot of new horror, and I like it. I like gory stuff and everything like that, but I don't find it scary.
Yeah.
The things I still find scary are all suggestion. Things that creep me out. Like, I was just talking to him about this yesterday. The Shining, because they don't tell anything. Also, that scene in The Tenant, Roman Polanski's The Tenant, the part where he moves the wardrobe and he sticks his finger into the hole in the wall and he pulls a tooth out.
Yeah.
And you don't know where that tooth came from
Yeah.
or whose it was.
So
And it was just
creepy.
so creepy just because why is that there? And like your just imagination starts going, oh my God, why? What
else is on the other side of that
yeah,
wall?
what circumstances led to that being there?
But then
And
on
I
the
think
other
that is
side-
way, way
The
scarier.
thing is, it makes you wonder. You know, I saw those as I was a kid when they were coming out.
Yeah.
I remember being scared of not really knowing what exactly what it was that they could show you. You know what I mean? 'Cause I wasn't really sure what the state of technology was.
Yeah, because now it's CGI and they
What
can show you
what
everything.
can they actually show me? I'm a kid going like, it can't be that scary. I mean, man, what can they show?
We were
It's gonna
talking
be
about
rubber
the,
monsters,
Yeah,
that's
it
all.
can't be that. You know what I mean? And then they'd show you something else, and you didn't expect that. You go, fuck.
well, we were
But
talking
now they can show
about-
you anything.
Yeah.
It's not really scary to me
Yeah.
because
What?
like the difference between the old John Carpenter thing. You know, remember the thing,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and then the new one.
Right.
The new one was good,
Yeah, I like that.
but that was CG. You know, they could show you anything.
Yeah.
So
I
back
think
when
like the 1974, I'm sorry, 1974 Black Christmas, and I don't
Yeah.
know if any of you have seen that. Please watch it.
Yeah, it's called
19
Christmas.
Black Christmas,
Yeah.
not the remake, which was made 2006. 1974's Black Christmas has Olivia de Hussey in it and Keir Dullea. It's just such an amazing film. It was from the point of view of the killer in some parts, but it was new at the time. Very subtle music, very subtle sounds. There's not, I don't think there's probably any gore in it at all. Very psychological. A person who makes obscene phone calls to a sorority house, and it's just, but it's frightening.
I think
It's
I remember
so
that
creepy.
one.
Yeah, that was a good
So
one.
good, and Olivia de Hussey, it's just amazing in it, and it's just, it was really
do you
really good.
remember one from the '70s called The Legacy?
Yes, I own
Wasn't
it.
that good?
Yes,
God, that's
that
something
is
like-
amazing one
If
too.
you guys haven't seen this one, it's about a bunch of people meeting in a huge mansion. You're not really sure what's going on. It's a bunch of witches.
It's great.
It's weird.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's called The Legacy.
I
Yeah,
remember
You can
that.
probably watch it for free on
1978,
YouTube.
I think we did.
Yeah.
I think we watched
Yeah.
it.
And that was one when I was a
What's it-
kid. I'm going, how bad could this really get? You know what I mean? What can they actually show me? You know, is it something
Yeah.
gonna pop out? You know, and they don't really. They show you disturbing shit, but it's the context. What's a good way to describe that? Yeah.
Gosh, it's hard to describe, and I saw it when I was a kid too, and then I bought it later on
When
DVD.
they fed those dogs.
Yeah, and a lot of that too is things happen that you don't know who's doing the. There's not that much gore in it. It's
No.
just really frightening psychological stuff about this house in England that's out in the country. It's isolated, and they just invite. It's almost like Agatha Christie's, and then there were none. Like
Yeah,
it's
there's a
just
big
all these
party
people
happening,
invited,
and you don't
and
know
they
what's
slowly
going
start
on.
getting killed off. And also has Roger Daltrey in it. You
Yeah.
know?
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
When he was young.
yeah, he's in it too.
But anyway, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'd say one of the points that we made earlier on the Stranger Things panel, talking about the influence of the '80s movies on it, was the thing that a lot of those movies just didn't really have a lot of money,
Yeah.
so they kind of had to work with what they had and stretch things out, and it kind of made it made it look like they were,
Doing more than they actually were.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It
But
worked to their benefit.
But I
Yeah.
think when you look at when you have less, I think that's when the creative juices
Right.
have to
Yeah.
work
Try
harder
harder.
to make it work.
Yeah, it makes the audience kind of kick in
Oh, yeah.
the extra
Yeah.
yard.
Yeah, and honestly, I think the scariest movies, like I said, are ones that don't. I mean, still one of the scariest movies to me ever, The Haunting,
Yeah.
from 1963, and they showed
It is.
nothing. They showed essentially nothing in that movie. It was all sound effects. It was all angles. It was all people's reactions, their
Yeah.
faces. They showed almost nothing, and it was creepy as hell. Still creepy now.
I just got the high sign from Alicia, so we're
Okay.
done.
We're done.
But on the other side, there's a,
Almost.
oh my gosh. In the Mouth of Madness.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
good.
Yeah. Where you have
That's a
to
great
show
movie.
it, you know.
And
Yeah,
in Mouth of
sometimes you do.
Madness, if you haven't seen it, that's about a horror author
Yeah,
whose
it's
world
awesome.
of horror creates a world of horror that becomes a town
Yes.
that becomes alive.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
And it is Neil oh gosh, the actor name. Sam Neill.
Yeah.
And it is amazing.
Yes,
That's a great
it
movie.
is. I love
Yeah.
that.
Check out Valerie on the Stairs too with Tony Todd and
Okay.
Christopher Lloyd. A bunch of writers move into a house and they try to.
Okay.
Discover mystery.
And check out Demon Seed. Check that out.
Oh, that's a good one.
Was that 1972?
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Demon Seed? Oh, that was
All right, thank you,
a lot of
everybody.
that's coming
Thank
through.
you.
Good night, guys.
Yeah.